The WYSL stations present an hour of truth for the battered but proud people of the Empire State. From the financial and entertainment epicenter of New York City to the sleeping and empty small cities and towns of upstate, which once bustled with manufacturing, mining, and farming. We all know from inspiration, history, and nature, we deserve a return to the success and growth of generations past, a birthright being squandered by corruption in Albany, and the depredations of an insecure, scheming mountebank posing as governor, who loathes both us and himself. As liberty beckoned to enslaved peoples behind the Iron Curtain via American broadcasts after World War II, we now say, believe, rise, and join us. Welcome to Radio Free New York. And as we say in the radio industry, Andrew Hollister is on assignment, meaning, actually just between you and me, Yolanda told him to clean out the garage. We have Kevin Wilson, the libertarian extraordinaire, in the studio.
Howdy. Yep, I'm back subbing in for Andrew today. I'm here on Radio Free New York. Thanks for allowing me in the studio again, Bob.
No, thank you for allowing me in the studio.
No, it's always fun. Love coming in and having these conversations. It's always a great time. And, you know, I got some interesting stuff lined up, I think. I know what the topic that
in New York State, we're never at a loss for material. So,
never-ending stuff coming out of the state. Though today I want to get maybe a little bit philosophical, right?
Ooh.
Give me a second, because I've seen a trend within the conservative movement. Bob, do you know what conservative fusionism is?
No.
Okay, so conservative fusionism, we should explain it to our listeners anyway. It's this concept that there is an alliance in the conservative movement that kind of came out of the 60s and 70s, the National Review types, William F. Buckley types, that libertarians, religious right conservatives, nationalists kind of would all work together to build one cohesive conservative movement.
Okay.
Right? So that's kind of the Ronald Reagan coalition. And there's a bunch of stuff that I've seen lately that it's starting to make me think that maybe that coalition is totally falling apart. And I just see that with kind of the current intellectual trends on the right, obviously the president, and you know how people are reacting to libertarians who are within the Republican Party. And keep in mind that I used to be a Republican. For a long time, I was in the Republican Party. I considered myself conservative. I would I kind of came out of the Ron Paul movement, but that was something that for a period in time was something that made sense. I kind of, my political ideology formed in the Tea Party age. Around 2010 was when I started really forming like what I thought about government, about keeping government small. I was told that the conservative movement meant small government. It meant individual liberty. It meant giving people as much freedom as possible. Which
historically would have been right. So you were not politically active much at all until the Tea Party in 2010.
Yeah, I mean, like I paid attention to politics. I was like vaguely conservative. I eventually joined the college Republicans on my campus over at Wells College, but it was run by Democrats because there was no college Democrats there. So
that's shape of things to come.
Yeah, that's exactly. And so that's how I kind of came out of it is I started, I didn't even like Ron Paul at first, but eventually I kind of got to the point where I was like, you know what, this makes a lot more sense. I like the libertarian side of things. And as I kind of dove into the intellectual history of everything, again, you know, the William F. Buckley types, the who's the guy? Barry Goldwater types.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's the movement that formed the Reagan Revolution that ended up carrying 49 states in the mid 80s, and now the conservative movements moved past that. And what really made me think that is I heard, and I should talk to you ahead of time to get this clip lined up, but Tucker Carlson was on his show the other day, and he started blaming the libertarians who run Washington D.C. for all of our current problems.
Libertarians are running Washington? That's news to me.
It was news to all of us, Bob. So he starts blaming these, like, these libertarians. Of course, he's throwing in the word libertine in there, too, who run Washington, D.C.
Which is he talking about? Is he talking about libertarians or libertines? He's talking about libertines. He's talking about Democrats. But I repeat myself.
Exactly. Now, with him, it's interesting because he went on this thing and he's like, well, Republicans have cared far too long about economics. And that's kind of the perspective he's bringing to things.
Tucker Carlson said Republicans have cared too much about economics?
Yeah. No, it's a surreal clip. And he spends a good chunk of the rest of this episode talking about how Elizabeth Warren's plan is actually pretty solid and the Republicans need more economic nationalism.
Well, I heard that clip. Basically, Elizabeth Warren was just making noises like she was a conservative, kind of like, parrots. They go, Polly, want a cracker? But they have no idea what they're saying. So that was kind of like what Elizabeth Warren was doing. And she rattled off all these, kind of conservative statements. And Tucker Carlson said, who could disagree with any of those things?
Were they conservative statements, though?
Well, they sounded like it to me.
I don't know about that.
Since they were coming from Elizabeth Warren, I think we know the answer to that.
No. I mean, she always kind of pays lip service like, oh, I like market capitalism, I like markets, but she wants to regulate it.
Kirsten Gillibrand was a big gun proponent at one point when she was trying to get elected.
Sure they are. Now, there's this movement within conservatives to say, and actually I was surprised to see Dinesh D'Souza also said that there's too many Friedmanites in the Republican Party too. That the GOP needs to get rid of those, right? As in Milton Friedman, the economist, that people are, again, caring too much about whether or not we have economic freedom, and that's something that the conservative movement needs to move past.
Okay, so what we're doing here is we're fragmenting a lot of different vectors proceeding from what used to be, I would say, conservative orthodoxy.
Right. And so, I mean, this is one of those things that kind of played out behind the scenes and is starting to get a little bit more momentum. It started a long time ago, but one of the more recent flare-ups that ended up happening was this guy named Sohrab Ahmari wrote this thing about being against David Frenchism, right? David French as in the National Review writer, right? Who's a fairly conservative guy, very pro-life, kind of more pro-interventionist than I want. But he said that essentially the Republican Party had become too liberal in the classical sense, in that the Republican Party wants to protect individual freedoms for people to be able to act the way they want, people to be able to interact in the economy the way they want. And he and a number of other conservatives within the party want to, or within the broader movement, want to move away from that they want to get away from the classical liberalism, that we need to win the cultural war, in his mind, with government force if necessary.
What?
Yeah,
that's craziness. I mean, authoritarianism is the path to freedom. That's a pretty hard argument to make.
That's the argument that he's making. He's making the argument that by having tolerance, by allowing other cultures and ideas that this person considers immoral to exist, that ultimately corrupts and decays the culture and leads to decline.
Well, no, what you do is you fight artifice and untruth with the truth is what you do, and people will then find the way. That's the path to freedom. We don't do it top down using government as some kind of a cudgel to get people to think the way we want them to. We want them to seek the truth and realize the benefits that flow from living according to the truth.
That's the hope, right? But that's again, that's an idea that's starting to decay. And to be fair, not just within the conservative movement. I felt like the conservatives were kind of holding the line on that. Like, we need to fight speech with more speech. If there's an idea that we don't like from a moral perspective, we're going to convince people not to do that thing. But ultimately, individuals control their own lives. Now, we've seen the progressives fall to that pretty hard. You see, again, they want to police speech very aggressively. They want to police actions very aggressively. Even if you're not hurting someone or taking their stuff, there's so many rules in terms of political correctness that they're starting to want to use the hand of government to get involved with. And where these two ideas end up merging, interestingly enough, is in the social media space. Now, because what you're seeing the progressives who are upset with what they see as hate speech on social media, and you're seeing conservatives for what they see as being oppression on social media, and both of them are now going, well, gosh, we need the government to regulate social media. That's the solution that they've come to.
Right. I really question the bona fides of Republicans who are weighing in on that, because, as we all know, this is all about consolidation of power in these major tech companies.
Yeah, right.
And what they want is government to protect them from any kind of competition or someone who will bring in true free speech, and the cost of that is we sell our soul, make this Faustian deal with the federal government.
Yeah, and that's the direction that both the Republicans and Democrats are going. So for the people who are classical liberals who believe that government only exists to protect individual liberty, we've got a tough fight ahead. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that after the break coming up.
Yes, Radio Free New York, Libertarian Kevin Wilson in the house for Andrew Hollister, and we'll be right back.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
A reminder from Abate Monroe County. American bikers aim toward education. Distracted driving is dangerous, so pull over and eat. Don't try to read your mail and newspaper, and stay off your cell phone. Make a mental note to be more alert, making it a habit to expect the unexpected. Remember to look twice, save a life. Train yourself to watch for motorcycles which are harder to see. Join Abate, and your family will be protected with a free $4,000 accident policy. Ride safe, ride free, ride often. Abate. If you ride with us. Google Abate Monroe County.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
on the WYSL stations.
Kevin Wilson is back in the studio here on this edition of Radio Free New York.
Howdy, everyone. Yes, we were just talking about... I'm sorry, I'm moving away from the mic. It's my instinct. So we're
Everybody
just
wants to eat the microphone in here.
It's so tasty. No, so we're talking about kind of the ascending illiberalism in the conservative movement, and you're gonna have to. I use liberalism sometimes to describe what my philosophy is. I consider myself a classical liberal.
Classical liberal. We should define that for the folks out there.
Yeah, classical liberal.
Freedom of thought, freedom of ideas.
Exactly, and again, it's a concept that. The government, to the extent that it should exist, is just there to protect individual rights. Like, we protect your right to life, liberty, and property from others who would want to hurt you, and that's the minimum government that needs to exist.
Yeah, you think about the values that propelled the Enlightenment in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, exactly. So John Locke, John Stuart Mill, told you we're going to get philosophical. So those
okay,
types
don't
of
worry,
thinkers.
we won't desert you. You won't get lost. It's okay.
We'll try to give some context to that type of stuff. So my worry is, again, that this movement that has been propelled for the last 30 years, this coalition that has helped kind of put the Republicans in office, what made me a Republican initially, but I moved away from the party about 6 years ago. So this isn't something that's necessarily new to me. I always felt that the Republicans are always a bit hypocritical in saying like, oh, we're going to reduce spending, but also not really.
No.
We're going to
anything but.
Yeah, we're going to protect Second Amendment rights. Oh, but not really. And we got Trump saying that he's looking at banning suppressors now, which is frustrating. Thanks, Second Amendment guys.
After the famous bump stock ban and now suppressors. I think that the mentality on the Republican side has kind of, I don't know, it's kind of deteriorated into this, well, we got to do what it takes to get elected because we can't affect change unless we get elected. So they start making, kind of left of center noises, and hopefully that appeals to people, who are independents and who might be conservative Democrats. But I don't think it really works that way.
Maybe. I mean, see, the thing is, like, I don't even know that it's that anymore. And again, for a lot of my Republican friends, I love you guys, and a lot of you are still in the right about a lot of things. I talk to some of the folks locally, and they're great. They advocate for small government. They advocate for our rights. You guys are great. Not talking about you. But there is a cult of personality that exists around Trump who isn't necessarily moored to any ideological foundation.
Well, he's all about himself.
He's
self-promotion.
Yeah, it's self-promotion. And even if he's trying to do what's best, it's not linked to a foundation in limited government. It's not linked to a foundation in constitutionalism. He just does what seems right at the time, regardless of what the longer-term consequences of that are or if there are principles at stake, right? So there's this cult of personality that ends up developing around him where people are not likely to challenge the changes that he's made within the conservative movement because they're worried that challenging Trump, being seen as against President Trump, would be detrimental to the election too. Because there are some Republicans who go the other way, as you said. They try to appear more aggressive. They start a virtue signal in that direction in the hopes that they're going to be able to gain enough of a centrist movement to be able to get elected. But there's also this philosophy of we'll appeal to the base, and what the base wants is loyalty to the president, regardless of whether or not that's going to carry the principles that we said we valued forward, right? And so we'll get that in cases with like Mark Sanford, who is the former congressman from South Carolina, who was primaried out, and the Republicans ended up losing that seat. Mark Sanford is kind of a libertarian-leaning guy. And then you're certainly getting that now with Justin Amash, the congressman from Michigan that people are calling a rhino, despite the fact that Conservative Review rates him as one of the most conservative congressmen out there.
Yeah, based on his voting record. But the things that he said lately are anything but conservative. I mean, they're well, I don't know. It's just
let's talk about this. This is good.
Yeah, no, it's all the impeachment talk. I think
is that not conservative?
Is it not conservative to impeach? I don't think that under the concept of impeachment can be conservative, certainly.
Yeah.
But under the current circumstances, I think it's just a bunch of political noise making.
I mean, I don't see how that benefits Justin Amash, though, right?
No, I don't either. I'm perplexed by his decision to do this.
I mean, I think he is genuinely worried about the extension of presidential power, which didn't start with Trump, but he's certainly done that too. The lies and the misinformation that he has absolutely spread in office, and then what he sees as crimes that have happened while he was in office, right?
Such as
the obstruction of justice thing.
But it hasn't been proven.
Well, what the report actually says, in bear in mind that this report came out in April was when Congress got access to the report.
The Mueller report, Tom.
Yeah, the Mueller report, yes. Thank you. And so it took a month and a half for Justin Amash to start his kind of series of tweets about this, right? So he took his time, read it. It's so funny. Like the day that came out, you have the Republicans and Democrats all being like, Democrats like, oh, Mueller says he's guilty, impeach him. And then the Republicans are like, Mueller says he's innocent, everything's great. And I'm like, you guys did not read that 500-page report in 5 minutes. Come on, give me a break. But Justin Amash took his time, read the whole report, probably had his staff, his legislative assistants, all of them look over it, and then came to a conclusion. And that conclusion is that Mueller said he couldn't indict the president because of a standing Justice Department rule, but he could just lay out all of these things that the president has done that could be seen as inappropriate or illegal.
As far as obstruction is concerned.
As far as obstruction
There's no collusion, but you're talking about the obstruction part.
Well, the collusion part's funny because the collusion part, it's like they kind of would have, but it just didn't work out.
Right. I mean, this is what happens whenever you prosecute a case.
Yeah.
Either the facts are on your side or they're not, and in which case you can't prosecute. But as far as the obstruction thing is concerned, of course, there was no indictment of Trump because there doesn't need to be.
Well, it's Congress's job, though.
But this is the last impeachment we had. We had Ken Starr laying out all the peccadillos of Bill Clinton, but he didn't indict him either.
Yeah, well, and then again, that's what the Department of Justice does, though. Is I'm not going to get into. I don't know legally whether or not they can or should or whatever indict the president, but
they can.
Mueller's conclusion was essentially.
But that's beside the point.
Actually accuse him of a crime in this case. All he can do is lay out the facts as the investigation found, and then say, Congress, if you want to act on these facts, here they are, right? So that's what he did, and the facts as Justin Amash saw them, it was like, okay, well, based on these 10 incidences, we could impeach the president for this. And again, the president, the Constitution's kind of funny with what it says about impeachment. It's just high crimes and misdemeanors. Yeah,
and by the way, that does not comport with the usual statutory meaning of crime and misdemeanor. Those two words.
So, because
basically it's whatever Congress decides it is.
Yes, exactly. So Congress could decide like the president's just incompetent or they don't like him and they could impeach him, which hasn't exactly happened to date. There have only been 2 presidents who have been impeached, Andrew Johnson back in the 1860s and Bill Clinton. Richard Nixon was not impeached. He might have gotten impeached if he had stayed in office longer, but he resigned from office, so he wasn't impeached. So just Bill Clinton and Andrew Johnson back in the 1860s. So again, I think Justin Amash is one of the few Republicans in office who read this and came to a conclusion that there needs to be some action taken.
Actually, he's the only Republican, as far as I know.
So he's the only Republican in Congress who is.
That's what I meant.
That, right? Yes, you're right. I mean, it's interesting. Thomas Massey, who I normally like, just says he doesn't agree with Justin. He was fairly polite about it. Rand Paul took an interesting take on it. He essentially said that he didn't agree with the investigation as a whole because it was founded on warrantless surveillance of the presidential campaign, right? So Rand Paul, libertarian senator from Kentucky, or Republican, but he's libertarian-leaning senator from Kentucky, said when I think it was it Paul Manafort who was surveilled because he was talking to someone from a foreign country. The NSA picked it up, and then they kind of started rolling with this investigation of like, oh, are they talking with the Russian government about helping the campaign? Right?
So as we say in criminal prosecutions, fruit from the poisonous tree. Exactly. So it's warrantless, so the information was gathered illegally, so it can't be used against anyone.
Yeah, which I think is a valid criticism of the overall investigation, right? Like that's totally legitimate to say like the NSA should not have been doing that, and I've come out and said a bunch of times like, yeah, the NSA warrantless spying program should be shut down, absolutely. And in this case, it was used inappropriately to start that investigation. Now, it's interesting to see how the Republicans are saying like, oh well, because Justin Amash thinks that Donald Trump may have obstructed justice, he is against peeling back the abuses of the NSA. But that's just not true. You look at what he's done, and he's sponsored numerous bills to try to curtail the powers of these. And he's worked with people like Senator Rand Paul and Thomas Massey and I think Mike Lee as well to try to roll back these powers and to make sure that Americans aren't surveilled without having or that their Fourth Amendment rights aren't violated in these surveillance instances, that judges and law enforcement officials need to get a warrant before they start these types of things. And what happened in this case was that they didn't have an appropriate warrant for that particular conversation, which kicked off this investigation. And I think that's a perfectly valid criticism. Now, that being said, what Justin Amash is getting to, and what the Mueller report kind of gets to, is that once the investigation started, you can then commit crimes in attempting to impede that investigation. That if you attempt to obstruct justice, that's still an illegal action. And the argument from the Republicans is that you can't obstruct justice if you have essentially what you said, fruit from the poison tree, that the investigation was started under bad or illegal pretenses.
The problem is, where does this proceed from? What is the crime that is alleged to have been? I'm talking about in the context of high crimes and misdemeanors. What is specifically is the crime that Trump is being accused of by Justin Amash? I just like to know.
Obstruction of justice.
I know, but what? Well, what comprised that? What did he do?
Oh, well, we can talk about that after this break.
We'll have to because we're out of time for this segment, but we'll be back.
So we'll be back.
Radio Free New York with Kevin Wilson.
You're listening to the voice of liberty. AM 1040 Avon, Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, FM 95.5 Spencerport, and WYSL1040.com everywhere.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Aircraft Environmental Systems proudly supports Radio Free New York. Rochester-based leaders in climate simulation chambers for America's R&D laboratories. We're experts in troubleshooting, calibrations, custom designs, and consulting for more than 40 years. Industry pioneers, we created the first ever fleet of temperature, humidity, and altitude test chambers available to rent coast to coast. Trained and trusted by environmental chamber manufacturers, we are ACES. Find us at acesinc.com.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovation should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Radio Free New York on WYSL.
AM 1040, FM 92.1, and FM 95.5 West.
And we're back on Radio Free New York for your Friday with Kevin Wilson.
Yep. Subbing in for Andrew here at WYSL, Radio Free New York. And I think my sound's working online now. Yay! So hopefully you guys can hear me at home. I've recorded this, so we will get the recording up for you later in case you missed the first part of this episode. So we were talking about Justin Amash. We were talking about the impeachment thing. And again, Justin Amash does outline the reasons why he feels impeachment's appropriate. I don't know if we want to go over all those now, but
Just give us a couple for instances.
Okay, a couple for instances was when he had asked
President Trump,
yes, let's be specific, you're right. President Trump had asked, he had asked people to resign. He had asked people to stop the investigation. He had asked, I'm going to try to find his exact tweet so I can get it right. All right, so let's see. Justin Amash, One Piece system. Oh, okay.
So Justin Amash is saying that this is all related to the Trump the Russia investigation of Trump, and that Trump was in some way trying to impede that investigation.
Yeah,
is that fair to say?
That's exactly what he's trying to say. And in this case, the way he had impeded was to again take actions to try to stop that. Most of which weren't obeyed, which is kind of an interesting kind of constitutional thing. Like he had asked his counsel to lie. He had asked them to again take different actions to stop the investigations. He had asked Okay. He had kind of implied in public that he would give pardons for kind of not folding in the face of this investigation. And again, he may not have actually committed the original crime, like the source of the original investigation.
So these are process crimes, is what you're saying. These are where he was telling an untruth, but was he under oath? I mean, look, here's the thing about all this stuff. Justin Amash, I'm looking at you right now. These are allegations. These are questions of fact. And presumably with the $30 million in the 26 months or however many it was, that Mueller investigated all of this stuff. If there was a question of fact that proved these allegations, they would have been brought forward, and that would have resulted in some kind of a charge in front of Congress. A prosecutor does one of two things. A prosecutor, which is basically what Mueller was, that's how he was performing. He either refers the matter for prosecution, or he says there is insufficient evidence, there are not the facts to support a prosecution. And so there's either a prosecution or there's not a prosecution. A prosecutor who's in that role does not say, well, we couldn't find anything, but there's some other stuff there, and Congress may want to take another look at it.
No, this is obviously a special case, though. Like, this is the President of the United States, the Justice Department.
But the law is the law, right? I mean,
no, it is the law, and that's why I'm kind of skeptical that the Justice Department thinks its hands are tied more than maybe it ought to be in some instances. But in this case, yeah, he doesn't want to overstep his constitutional authority and cause a constitutional crisis. He just says, here are the facts as we found them, and that the president had attempted to use his power to impede an ongoing investigation is something that's really serious. And it's not the underlying crime. It was the cover-up that's kind of an issue. And I don't really like process. Like, I don't like how they got people like Paul Manafort, who I absolutely don't like. He's a terrible guy if you've ever researched what he's done in his life. But they got him basically on lying to the FBI.
Right.
I think it's a nonsense crime.
Manafort's a slime ball and probably deserves to go to slammer for a number of reasons. But other people like Flynn, I mean, these guys, their lives were trashed, and it's all this would their quote crimes unquote would not have occurred but for the presence of the investigation.
Right.
And that's the old, they haul you in and they put you under oath, and you say, what did you do on Tuesday? And you say, no, I think it was Wednesday. Then it turns out to be Tuesday because your memory's faulty, and now you're guilty of lying.
The FBI.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
And that's nonsense. And that, again, people shouldn't be going to jail for that, really. Lawyer up, folks. Don't talk to the FBI without a lawyer.
Don't ever talk to the government. But the truth of the matter is that with lawyer or with not, they're going to get you. They're going to find some way to do it.
Yeah.
If that's what they want to do. As Stalin used to say, "You show me the man, I'll show you the crime."
That's right, and that's where we're kind of in that position in the United States. But I think kind of the bigger issue that Justin Amash is pointing out is like we have a president who's absolutely misrepresented the truth, and he didn't necessarily commit a crime in doing that, but that's concerning for someone that we're trusting to be the president of the United States. And Obama misrepresented the truth too, and George W. Bush misrepresented the truth too. And I don't particularly like that. I think that we should use the impeachment power more. I think that presidents often abuse their constitutional authority, and that when they do so, Congress needs to step up and take action.
Well, yes, let's rewind a couple of frames here. Absolutely, Congress needs to do its job. Congress, a long time ago, decided that its jobs are twofold. Number one is to raise money to run for re-election, and the other job is to run for re-election.
Right.
And all the
collecting the paycheck for it.
All of the legislative functions all get delegated to the fourth branch of government, unelected bureaucrats, to lobbyists, and increasingly, and this is what I find to be the especially troubling part of all of this, the media.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's a lot of policy is shaped through these public discussions, but yeah, I mean, we have that example right now too, where President Trump is able to declare an emergency and impose a tariff, and even if you agree with the reasons, like, what constitutional authority does he actually have to do that? And is Congress actually going to say, "Oh, come on, that's not really like how you're supposed to use that"? But no, they're not going to do that. They're not going to actually take back their power to levy taxes.
No, because with the power comes accountability, and that's the part that they don't want.
No,
that's
they'd rather be unaccountable, and they can blame someone else or say,
you know what? I'll tell you what, that Education Department, I'm going to write them. You're absolutely right about Common Core. I'm going to write them a sternly worded letter. So now we have members of Congress who are supposed to be the people's representatives, and they're in the letter writing business.
Yeah, no, and all they're going to do is just like make some noise about it, and then
I did what I could. I stepped up. I'm fighting for you. How many political commercials have you heard saying? Fighting for better schools, fighting for lower taxes, fighting for less potholes. Who are they fighting? Apparently, they're fighting us.
Yes. You figured it out, Bob.
Thanks. It only took me 50 years or so to do that, but
oh, good. I'm ahead of the curve then.
Yes, you are.
All right. So again, with this, I don't think Justin's acting in bad faith. I think he's concerned about a president who again misrepresents the truth, who's trying to act to cover things up, who's using his power in an inappropriate way. And he's done that across administrations. And what gets me is that the Republicans who are turning their back on him. Because kind of getting back to the liberalism that's rising in the conservative
turning
movement.
their back on Trump or Amash?
No, on Amash,
yeah.
Right? So he's getting primaried now, of course, just like Mark Sanford was, just like any other Republican who challenges the president will be. And they're saying like, oh, he's not a real conservative because he's challenging the president. Even though they're like, oh, where were you when Obama was abusing his power? And he's like, all right here are the tweets that I sent out saying Obama should be impeached over this unconstitutional action and that we needed to take the power of Congress back here. We need to protect Fourth Amendment rights. We need to protect Second Amendment rights. He's been there the whole time since 2010, since he got elected. Again, if we're measuring conservatism by limited government principles, he's one of the best. And again, I don't...
As expressed in tweets.
As expressed in bills that he's supported.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, because I wanted to ask that question. Because, I didn't want to stop your train of thought there, but this is an increasing trend that I'm seeing generally in national politics. Now, full disclosure, this comes from someone who does not use social media. That would be me, because I just don't. I think it's.
You're probably better off for it.
I think I am, and in point of fact, every time I bring this up, that's the sentiment I get from people. You're probably better off. But let's understand that tweets are not a substitute for legislative action. Absolutely true.
No, you're right, and I think you could certainly level that criticism at a lot of politicians.
Almost all of them.
Yeah, no, a lot of them. And they like to, and it kind of getting back to what we said before, they will signal that they are for you on this issue. Oh, I'm going to write that stern letter to the Department of Education, to the DEA, to whatever it is, and they'll tweet about it. They'll get some, applause. People feel good. And then they don't do anything.
Right. No, that's where it ends.
Yeah, and that's the end all be all of the whole conversation. But Justin Amash, guy's a true believer, and it's funny seeing the progressive articles come about him. They're like, oh, yeah, the Tea Party movement, like most of them, they weren't really serious about reducing debt, and thank God. But Justin Amash, that guy's an actual fanatic. He really does want to reduce the debt. He really does want to pull back the federal
I believe his voting record shows he actually did reduce spending, did he not? I mean, not just reducing the amount of increase in Michigan, but reducing overall spending. I could be wrong about that.
For what he's fought for. A lot of times he's alone in this fight. It's him and Rand Paul on his better days, and Thomas Massey and Mike Lee and like a handful of others in Congress who actually want to keep the federal government accountable and to not spend away our entire future. But again, he's one of the good guys, and it's so frustrating to see portions of the movement turn his back on him now that partisanship has gotten in the way. And that's the thing that bugs me, is that partisanship is so toxic. And I feel like I've gone on this rant so many times, but partisanship is so toxic that it ends up getting you to betray every single principle that you've ever held. That if we actually stick to what is good, what makes sense, what conclusions we can get to based on reason, based on freedom, based on ideological principles moored in morality, which is what I think liberalism in the very broadest sense of the word is. That would be a much better way of doing things. Instead, again, we dive into these tribes with both the Republicans and Democrats can't support good legislation because they're loyal to their team.
Right. What are you going to do? Vote for the Democrats? Yeah, exactly. And tribal politics is that's the other toxic place where this leads us.
Yeah, and so the disagreement with that tribalism leads people turning their back on the people who have actual principles moored in the broadest sense of liberalism that the country was founded on. And that's sad. That's frustrating. And, I'm not quite sure what to do with that, but we're going to keep fighting.
Well, we do. And we'll fight for another segment here on Radio Free New York after this break.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
I'm Las from Action Towing and Service. The people really make this place incredible. I feel at home. I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. The owner of the business is actively involved. He is a veteran. We have a very close relationship with all of the staff. Every employee there is known by name, and we really, really work hard on giving that home feel or the family feel. Please give us an opportunity when your business. Come down and visit us at 275 Marketplace Drive, right off of Jefferson Road.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
on the WYSL stations.
Okay, folks, thanks so much for joining us for Radio Free New York for this Friday. Bob Savage in studio with Kevin Wilson.
Yep, back in subbing for Andrew Hollister here at Radio Free New York. And we've been talking about kind of the death of conservative fusionism, partisanship, the rising of liberalism, and again, I use liberal in the sense of classic liberal government. I'm going to keep saying that because my habit for many years was to use liberal as a substitute for progressive. But when I mean the Democrats, I'm going to say progressive, or I'll call them what they are, socialists. That's what they are. But
liberal, small L liberal.
Small L liberal. Yeah. Because the Democrats, they've lost a lot. The liberals, in the broadest sense of the term, have lost a lot of their ground to the socialists and the progressives. The people who want to control you, who want to think of things in a collective, who want to control not just your personal life but also your economic life as well. And I've spent a lot of time talking about conservatives because I know the listenership of the station tends to lean a little bit in that direction, but let's not forget that the progressives are very much losing ground in that direction too. You'd be hard pressed to find a lot of Democrats who would agree with the classical liberal label anymore. A few, but
yeah. And by the way, that's why I would pretty confidently predict that Biden is going to be the nominee. I think on the Democrat side.
Think so? Biden?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. You don't think it's going to be Bernie?
I don't think it's going to be Bernie. When Bernie is saying things like what he said the other day when he declared that what we need to do is pay more so that we can get things for free.
Yeah. Or
that doesn't compute.
Yeah. Or it could be someone like Elizabeth Warren, which, again, people like Tucker Carlson have gone on praising.
Well, in one instance, he quoted her at some length about some economic issues and said what Republican would disagree with any of these tenets. So there's a couple of major.
I'm flabbergasted by this. To me, I'm like, how could any Republican look at Elizabeth Warren and be like, yeah, you know what, that's the direction.
Well,
the
I
party
think
should go.
I think to some extent. I mean, I don't know, but my guess would be Tucker Carlson had tongue planted in cheek firmly when he quoted all that stuff. I don't think he meant that Elizabeth Warren is a potentially great commander in chief for the United States.
No, and I wouldn't say that either. What I think he said is that he thought the Republicans should adopt a more economically nationalist platform
that's
mixed
the larger
with social
point.
Conservatism, which again to me is the antithesis of what libertarianism is. It's the antithesis of free markets and free societies, is to have a national economic plan, to think of us as a collective, to think of us as like nationalist as compared to individuals who are operating, trying to meet their own needs and make sense for them. I don't think that authority should come from the top down. But I don't think that he's necessarily wrong either that an economic nationalist with a social conservative platform would do bad. I think that he's probably right on that. And the reason why is that a lot of people are scared. They're absolutely terrified of what's going on right now. They're terrified of the Democrats. They're terrified of the Republicans. And when people are fearful, they want to find something that is nice and safe. The Democrats are offering the safety of socialism. Now, that safety is going to suffocate you, and it's going to suffocate the economy. But for a lot of people, it seems nice. The government's going to take care of me. That is great. And the conservatives, the nationalist movement within the Conservative Party is trying to feel the same thing. Like, we will keep you safe. We'll keep you safe from immigrants. We'll keep you safe from economic woes. We'll bring you as part of this group. We will build up your identity as an American, and that is going to keep you safe. If we have a strong central authority, we're going to make sure that you have freedom from fear. And that's what that is.
That's a bridge too far, I'm telling you. If you think about that for just a minute. I mean, really what we're talking about here, those two scenarios that you just posited, the only thing that differs between them is the methods.
Yeah. No, that's a lot of what that is. And again, people are terrified. And there's a lesson I think that a lot of libertarians learned in 2016, because we thought in 2016 that if we just made people terrified enough of the two presidential candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, that people would fall into our camp because we're the sensible alternative. But that's not what happens.
This is you, the libertarians.
Us, the libertarians. We thought, we offer this way that has individual freedom that is probably closer to where the Overton window was pre-2016 than what is being offered by the far left in the Democratic Party and the far right in the Republican Party. But the Overton window is moving. And part of the reason why is, again, people are scared. So because they're scared, when people are scared, they want this sense of safety, and you don't get safety in individual freedom. Individual liberty isn't safe. It really isn't. There's a lot of risk involved. And that's what it is. There's a lot more reward involved too. But individual liberty isn't safe. You could go bankrupt. You could take on a lot of student loan debt and struggle. You could get hurt. If everyone has Second Amendment rights, that means that some people might abuse those rights and hurt other people. It might mean that, again, some immigrant comes in and they do take your job. But overall, the argument is, and it's really hard to see it, that life is going to be better. That because we have people who are making their own choices and who are able to interact freely and are able to trade freely with other businesses, because nations don't trade with each other. We don't trade with China. We don't trade with Mexico. American businesses trade with Mexican businesses. American individuals trade with Chinese individuals. That's what actually happens. Nations don't trade with each other. And we have to kind of trust that system is going to be better. But when you don't have that trust, when you have fear instead, it's hard for people to agree that you should have liberty. And it's starting to deteriorate within both parties. And I think right now there's an opportunity for true classical liberals in the broadest sense of the word, not just libertarians, but classical liberals, people who believe in individual liberty. And there's some in the Democrats still. There's some in there's many in the Republican Party still. There's an opportunity to drag the Overton window back towards us, because if we don't fight for that, we're going to lose this battle. Freedom is something that each generation has to continually fight for, and I think that.
Well, you have to redefine it individually for yourself. You have to say, this is what liberty means to me.
Yeah.
And then you have to kind of align that with history and say, what's the best way to get there? And it's never through government. It never works through government. I don't care, what badge somebody's wearing or what ideology they profess. It's always all about the individual, and the individual starts, folks, with you. And I'm sorry, there's no easy way to get to this. You got to do the work.
No, and that's my call to all of you listening today, is that we need to put in the work. We need to make the arguments. We can't take for granted, especially people who are already on the libertarian side or on the classical liberal side. We can't take for granted that we have the freedoms that we have now. You have to keep making those arguments. You have to make the arguments for capitalism. You have to make the arguments for individual liberty. You have to make the arguments for free trade. You have to make the arguments for Second Amendment rights. And it is exhausting to do, but you've got to keep doing it. You've got to do it in good faith, and you can't get to the point where you're just going to throw your hands up and say, oh, well, these people are just different. They're never going to understand. We have to keep doing it.
Yeah, you also have to establish a filter. You have to filter out the lies, because self-interested people are going to tell you all kinds of bunk. I mean, the Democrats are going to tell you bunk. The Republicans are going to tell you bunk. Some libertarians will tell you bunk. And corporate, not present company accepted, of course. Corporate America is going to tell you a lot of bunk.
Yeah.
Higher education is going to tell you bunk with really stinky frosting all over it. It's up to you to figure out what really works. And I'm not just talking about in the abstract here. I'm talking about, how do you get what you want out of life?
Yeah.
You get what you want out of life by being in control of your life. And you can't be in control of your life if you're on the dole, if you're letting politicians spoon feed you stuff, and because all they want is your vote.
Yeah.
And the minute they've got your vote, they're done with you. They're done listening. They don't care. You won't hear from them. They won't have one even tangential interest in your life until the next election cycle.
Yeah.
And then the cycle will repeat.
That's right. And for some people, that it seems comforting. I know that doesn't sound right, but it seems comforting. Well, if I just give all my choices, these hard choices I have to make, I'm not able to get my life together. If I give those choices to the government, those smarter people will make better choices for me. Guys, they're not going to make better choices for you. That's not going to happen. But for a lot of people, that seems comforting. And they don't mind that they're not just giving up their own choice, they're giving up the choices for me and you too. And that's what we need to fight for. If someone wants to externalize all their choices, externalize all their freedom, they want to do it privately, just, okay, whatever, leave me alone though. I want to be able to make my own choices because I know what's best for my life. The government doesn't know what's best for my life. President Trump doesn't. Governor Cuomo doesn't. Not even the local politicians do. I want to be able to enjoy the freedom to to grow my business, to interact with people who I want to interact with, to be able to buy goods and services in a way that makes sense for me, as long as I'm not hurting someone or taking their stuff.
Yeah, and I also want to have an education for my kids that isn't top down and isn't prescribed by bureaucrats. In some cases, they're not even educators.
Yeah.
Because these people will tell you your kids all kinds of lies, and they're doing it right now.
No, absolutely.
You got to pay absolute attention to what your kids are learning in school.
No, and I actually, my backup plan for the show is I have a whole rant about why we need a paradigm shift in education, because that's part of it too. Part of it is that you end up learning this helplessness in school, but also through other ways as well. And we did fundamentally rethink how people learn how to learn, and how people engage in civic life. So that's my message for you, though, this week, while I'm hosting for Radio Free New York, is that we need to keep fighting that battle. We need to keep making that argument for liberty. That's it.
Thank you, Libertarian. I'm sorry. Yes, Libertarian Kevin Wilson. See you next time here on Radio Free New York.